It's Friday, June 18th, 2021. I'm NBC 15 Chief Meteorologist Alan Sealls, focusing on the forecast for the NBC 15 area, and that includes the threat of a tropical system. Look at all the rain offshore as of late afternoon, moving toward the coastline. This is part of a potential tropical cyclone. That's potential tropical cyclone number 3, which means it's likely to reach tropical storm force wind. Now, look at the wind right now. 45 miles an hour, but it's not technically a tropical storm. The reason why, even though that's the highest wind, it is not a full low pressure closed circulation. And you'll notice how lopsided the system is. The bright clouds where most of the rain is, it's all on the north, northeast, and east side of that storm that's rapidly now moving toward the Louisiana coast. Now, it is going to make landfall overnight along southeastern Louisiana. Winds pretty close to what they are right now, 45 miles an hour. By midday Saturday, as it moves through Mississippi, winds could still be about 40 miles an hour. And remember, that forecast cone is just for the center of the storm. And if the center takes a more easterly track, that's going to bring those 40-mile-an-hour winds closer to the NBC 15 area. Even going into Sunday, winds of about 35 miles an hour. Those are the steady winds. Notice the issue for us is rain. Even though the track goes to the west, the rain stays east of the storm. So we are in the area where we could see 5 to 8 inches of rain along our coastline going through Saturday night. Notice where the tropical storm warnings are, anywhere from Choctawhatchee Bay westward toward the south central coast of Louisiana. And that's because in those locations, you could see those winds reaching tropical storm force, which starts at 39 miles an hour. Those winds, of course, will be coming in from the Gulf of Mexico. And with that, you have that threat of storm surge with coastal flood advisories, coastal flood warnings. Now, on average, we're looking for several feet, potential feet of flooding due to wind pushing water up against the coastline. Now, of course, the amounts likely higher across coastal Mississippi, southeastern Louisiana. But if you are on a river that drains to the bay or to the Gulf of Mexico, water can get pushed up into those rivers, creating a storm surge that way. By late tonight, we'll start to see the risk of isolated severe thunderstorms within that rain band that could produce tornadoes. And then for tomorrow, we go to a level 2 threat out of 5 of isolated tornadoes. So these are some of our concerns. Even though the center will move through Louisiana, the big threats for this system are on the east side of the storm. Especially for the NBC 15 area, flash flooding because of the rain that is going to come, and in some spots it will be heavy for a long period, so rapidly rising water is a big concern. If you live in a community that typically floods with heavy rain, you've got to really be on guard. High wind, also an issue mostly at the coast or along the shorelines of our bays, and again, storm surge, although not extreme. Low-lying roads on our coastlines will probably have debris, maybe some coastal erosion, and we'll also watch for that threat of tornadoes. A couple of words and phrases you need to know. Right now, this is a potential tropical cyclone. That's a fairly new designation given to a storm that will likely form within 48 hours and make landfall, form into a named storm. Now this one, it may not actually cross that threshold, but the reason you declare it before it happens is so you can issue watches and warnings for something that hasn't yet happened. So that's why it is a potential tropical cyclone. Cyclone is a word that means any storm system that spins. It's used around the world. It can mean a hurricane, a typhoon, a tropical cyclone, and in some places it actually means tornado. But tropical cyclone means something that for us is likely to become a tropical storm. But here's the issue with subtropical storm. Right now, this system is lopsided. It doesn't have a complete circulation, and it could end up crossing that threshold, strengthening a bit and becoming a hybrid between a regular tropical storm and a regular low-pressure system. In that case, it would be called a subtropical storm. The next name on the list, if it reaches tropical storm status or subtropical storm status, the name would be CODERED. Now focus on the winds. There are two things here in white. That is the projection of wind speed. In yellow, that's the projection of wind gust. So speed is that steady wind. The gust is literally, it's a gust of wind. That's 10 o'clock this evening. don't think that if you live 10 miles from Bay Minette, things are going to be a lot different. So focus on the nearest reading to your community to get a sense of what we're looking at. On average, steady winds tonight, not extreme through the evening. Notice along the coast, you see those gusts, 24, 28 miles an hour. Moving through overnight, something else to keep in mind here. Look at the red in the Gulf of Mexico and look at the scale. That red is 40-mile-an-hour winds. So coming up to the coastline, there will be near tropical storm force winds. If you're on the beaches, if you're on the bays, that's where you could potentially see those winds. And then you can see the wind arrows giving you the direction. So by 6 o'clock in the morning, look at Greene County, George County, Mississippi. Steady winds, 16 to 23 miles an hour, gusting to 35. Notice the gusts across Washington County into Monroe County, but also notice places like Fairhope and then especially Dauphin Island. So it all depends on the wind direction and whether the wind is unimpeded as it approaches your location. 9 o'clock in the morning, we see that same sort of range where the average wind away from the coast, 15, 20 miles an hour, but gusting 30 to 40 miles an hour. So there are going to be gusts. Keep that in mind for any tree limbs that are compromised from our previous storms, and even things like awnings and siding, trampolines, patio umbrellas. You want to get all those things secure now. Along the coast, midday tomorrow, same story. There are your winds projected by 3 in the afternoon. Still seeing gusts 30 miles an hour plus steady winds 15 to 20 miles an hour. So on average, this is not going to be an extreme windstorm, but from time to time and from place to place, you could still experience some strong wind gusts. 6 o'clock in the evening, there you see that red offshore again, telling us that still that south wind creates that threat of storm surge and also just a strong wind. And then by Saturday evening, the higher winds begin to shift toward the northeast as the whole system moves away from us. Now let's talk about the rain. The rain has already started, and by the middle of tonight, it'll become moderate to heavy. Red is heavy, yellow is moderate. And notice overnight into sunrise, it really doesn't let up. There will be breaks in the rain, but still it's going to be more wet than not. You notice the wind arrows all heading into southern Mississippi, where the center of circulation will likely be. From early morning to midday, the heavy rain moves toward the northeast. We may start to get some breaks in the afternoon for many of us across southern Mississippi, southwestern Alabama. And as you look at this rain, keep in mind there could be tornadoes embedded in it. We don't yet know. It's all going to be determined once we get to that point. By late afternoon tomorrow, maybe a break in the rain. Notice how the rain continues to go eastward, and then of course late Saturday night into Sunday, less wet. But still the rain's not totally going to end. We go into Sunday, and even though the low pressure will be well to our northeast, there could be trailing bands of rain still feeding into that system. So a very wet Saturday and a mostly off and on wet Sunday. Both days of course are going to be very humid. Here's a closer view of the rainfall projections. Along the I-10 corridor southward, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 inches of rain. Now this is through Sunday. So if it doesn't come down all at once, many of us will be okay. If it comes down too fast, then we've got some serious issues. Along the Highway 84 corridor, you're looking at 3 to 6 inches of rain, so half a foot, a month's worth of rain in just a couple of days. So those are our big threats. Because of that rain that's on the way, many of our rivers are already in flood warning. It's to prepare for the water that will drain and flow down the rivers, particularly Styx River and also Fish River. You've got to be on guard, and other rivers may be added to those flood warning areas. As of late afternoon, dangerous surf, dangerous rip currents. Winds have not really increased much. Steady wind at near 10 miles an hour at Gulf Shore is 75 degrees. Storm surge that I mentioned, it's when that wind pushes water up against the coast, it erodes the coastline. Right at the beaches, you could see water levels about 3 feet above average, but even a half mile, a mile or two away, you could still get water in low spots, and that's part of storm surge. It's not just at the beach. And of course, roads that run parallel to the beach, that's where you could find some debris on those roadways. Another road that we are always concerned about with the strong south wind is the causeway. I showed you the winds easily 20, 25 miles an hour, gusting 30, 35. Well, on the causeway, the eastbound lanes, They pick up that strong south wind, and literally what that does, it pushes the water up over that barrier. The Mobile Bay is really not that deep, but this could be an issue midday tomorrow. High tide is approaching noon tomorrow. However, the difference between high tide and low tide tomorrow is about half a foot. So it's not going to be a dramatic difference, but you've got to watch for that if you're even thinking about traveling. And keep in mind, if you're on a river, you've got to watch for storm surge. So there is potential tropical cyclone number 3 from early morning into the afternoon. You can barely make out where the circulation is. It's south of the Louisiana coast. And you notice all the clouds on the east side of it. It's a lopsided storm, similar but not the same as Tropical Storm Marco last year, which approached Louisiana, and the rain was way back across southeastern Alabama. So the center of the storm does not always define the threats. Stay updated. I'm NBC 15 Chief Meteorologist, and stay safe.